try to imagine a time when the very idea of India as one single country just didn't exist. You see, the land was really a patchwork of kingdoms, a mosaic of different languages, religions, and cultures. So what changed? How did this incredibly diverse subcontinent start to see itself as one people with one shared destiny? You know, this line here from a play written way back in the 19th century, it wasn't just dialogue. It was basically bottling up this feeling that was spreading everywhere, a feeling of injustice and this growing, urgent need for Indians to finally unite against a common problem. And that, right there, is the big question we're tackling today. The birth of Indian nationalism wasn't some single Big Bang event. No, it was more like a slow-cooking recipe, with all these powerful ingredients simmering together over decades to create a totally new, shared identity. So the foundation for all of this, the very bedrock of this new unity, was a shared experience of hardship. All across the subcontinent, you had different groups, farmers in Bengal, artisans in Madras, traders in Bombay, and they all started to realize they were facing the exact same problem, the crushing economic policies of the British. It spared no one. Okay, so let's really get into it. Let's break down this recipe for a nation. What were the key ingredients that cooked up this powerful, game-changing idea of Indian nationalism? All right, ingredient number one, and this is maybe the big one, a common enemy. The economic exploitation by the British. That was the one thing that cut across all the other divisions. See, their policies were all about making Britain rich, which led to widespread poverty and unemployment that hit basically every single community in India. And what's so interesting is how early leaders like Dadabhai Nairoji here actually gave this feeling a name. His famous drain theory wasn't just an emotional argument. It was a well-researched theory that showed how British rule was systematically draining India of its wealth. This gave a real intellectual backbone to all that growing anger. Next up, an ingredient that, well, the British themselves threw this one into the mix. And the result was completely unintentional and, for them, pretty disastrous. And that was Western education. So the British had this idea, right? Let's introduce English education to create a class of loyal subjects who will help us run things. But it completely backfired. Instead, they armed a whole generation of Indians with the very ideas of democracy and liberty that would be used to challenge their rule. And the irony? The English language itself became the tool that united leaders from all across the country. But the change wasn't just political or economic. The third key ingredient was a cultural and social renaissance. This movement to rebuild Indian self-confidence from the inside out. You had visionaries like Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Pandita Ramabai, who started challenging outdated social customs. They argued that India could modernize on its own terms by rediscovering the strength that was already in its own culture. This sparked this incredible surge of national pride and self-belief. And the final key ingredient, in another major twist of irony, was also a British creation: modern transport and communication. The very tools they built to control the subcontinent would actually end up helping to unite it. The British built railways to move troops and raw materials. They laid telegraph lines for quick military communication. But these networks became the arteries of the nationalist movement. They allowed leaders to travel, to organize, and to spread their ideas faster than ever before. For the first time, a person from Punjab could easily connect with someone from Bengal, physically and ideologically stitching the subcontinent together. So you've got all these ingredients simmering, right? A shared grievance, powerful new ideas, a sense of cultural pride, and new ways to connect. The time was finally ripe for the next logical step, creating a formal, all-India political organization to give this emerging national feeling a single unified voice. And that moment came in 1885. 72 educated Indians from all different regions met in Bombay. I mean, this was a diverse group, separated by language, by religion, by class, but they were all united by one common purpose. The Indian National Congress was born. Now, it's really important to get this. Their initial goals were pretty modest. They weren't storming the gates demanding independence just yet. They wanted to build a platform for dialogue, to grow that sense of national unity, and to present their grievances to the British government. They were carefully, patiently laying the groundwork for what was to come. But, this phase of polite requests and petitions, that was not going to last. The young movement soon faced a major test that would force it to shift gears from quiet dialogue to a massive public showdown.
So in 1905, the British made a very calculated move. They partitioned Bengal, which was the nerve center of the whole nationalist movement. Officially, they claimed it was for administrative efficiency. But this internal memo from a top British official, it just lays their real motive bare: divide and rule. They wanted to split Hindus and Muslims and break the back of the nationalist movement.
Well, the response was immediate, it was massive, and it was passionate. It was called the Swadeshi Movement, and it became India's first real mass political struggle. The core idea was simple but incredibly powerful: economic self-reliance. It was a direct answer to that drain theory. If Britain was getting rich off India, then Indians would simply stop buying British goods and promote their. And this wasn't just about politics. It completely transformed daily life. People started their own Indian-owned banks and factories. They'd even return wedding gifts if they were made with foreign materials. And for the first time, this wasn't just a movement of educated elites. You had students, women, ordinary people out on the streets, making their voices heard. But all this new, powerful energy, it also created deep divisions. The very success of the Swadeshi movement sparked this fierce debate inside the nationalist camp about the best way to move forward. Was the path to freedom paved with polite petitions, or did it require open confrontation? So, two clear and increasingly hostile factions emerged. On one side, you had the moderates who believed in slow, gradual constitutional reform, and on the other, you had the extremists, led by figures like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who passionately argued that freedom couldn't be requested, it had to be won through direct action. This clash of ideas got so intense that it literally split the Congress right down the middle in 1907. But despite the internal splits and despite the harsh British suppression that followed, something fundamental and irreversible had changed. The idea of India as a nation was now firmly planted in the hearts and minds of the people. This whole early phase, with all its debates and all its struggles, had laid the essential foundation for the next, and most famous, chapter of the freedom struggle. Those shared grievances, the fire of new ideas, the cultural awakening, and the sheer power of mass movements had all come together and successfully forged a national consciousness where before there was none. They had created a powerful shared dream of a free and united India, a dream that was only going to get stronger. The stage was now perfectly set for the arrival of a leader who had been honing his unique methods over in South Africa, a man named Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. How he would take all this raw energy and channel it into a force for change the world had never seen? Well, that is a story for our next explainer.